She was just a cleaner, silent, unnoticed, invisible. But the moment Mira Halden spoke up in a language no one expected, everything changed. In a matter of seconds, she went from background staff to the center of the hotel's attention. And not everyone was happy about it. What started as a simple act of kindness turned into a quiet revolution. One that would shake the walls of power, loyalty, and pride. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. Now, let's jump into the story. The marble floors of Belcourt Regency sparkled under the early morning light. The hotel lobby, still and silent, smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and fresh lilies. Mira Halden, a cleaner in her mid-20s, moved quietly across the tiles. Her hands were red from scrubbing, and the mop in her grip swayed rhythmically like a dance she knew by heart. She didn't like being noticed. Mira had worked the night shift for almost 3 years, keeping to the shadows, unseen by the well-dressed guests who walked these halls during the day. Her long brown hair was tied back tightly. Her name tag was slightly scratched. She didn't mind. Being invisible was easier. That morning, like most others, she kept her head down, her mind half drifting to the grocery list she needed to write, the math homework her younger brother Thomas had asked for help with, and the letter from the landlord that she had yet to open. Then it happened. A sharp, panicked voice sliced through the quiet. Per favor, qualcuno mi può aiutare? C'è un problema nella mia stanza. The voice echoed through the high ceiling. Mira froze. Italian. Several heads turned. A woman stood near the front desk, frustration and fear etched into her elegant face. She was clearly upset, gesturing quickly with her hands, but the receptionist wasn't there. Neither were the concierge staff. Only 2 bellhops exchanged helpless looks. Mira looked around. No one moved. She could have stayed quiet. She could have turned away like always. Instead, something inside her shifted. She walked forward, slow but steady, heart hammering in her chest. Her mop clicked against the marble once, then she let it rest against the wall. Signora, posso aiutarla? Parlo italiano, Mira said softly. The woman's eyes lit up with relief. She started explaining, fast, but Mira kept up, calm, polite, and fluent. The entire lobby seemed to pause. Even the air felt different, thicker somehow. A couple on the couch stopped scrolling on their phones. A manager coming out of the elevator halted mid-step. A bellhop whispered something Mira couldn't hear. She felt the weight of every stare pressing down on her shoulders. A cleaner wasn't supposed to talk to guests, and definitely not like this. Mira gave the woman clear instructions, assured her everything would be taken care of, and even called someone upstairs to check on the room. As the guest walked away, grateful and calm, Mira turned to collect her mop. That's when she heard it. Firm footsteps across marble. Sharp and deliberate. Out of the hallway stepped a man in a deep navy suit. His silver cufflinks caught the morning light. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were fixed on her. Mira's throat tightened. She knew who he was. Everyone did. Mr. Kalen Royce, director of the Belcourt Regency, known for being polished, distant, and rarely seen outside of closed-door meetings. If he was out here now, it wasn't for small talk. He stopped a few steps from her. You, my office. Now. Mira's heart sank. She followed in silence, her footsteps light as she trailed behind him down the quiet hallway. Her stomach twisted. Had she broken some rule? Spoken out of turn? Would she lose her job? Inside the office, she stood near the door, unsure if she should sit. The room smelled of leather and paper, with tall windows behind the large desk. Royce didn't sit. He turned, arms crossed. You spoke Italian, he said, not asking. Stating. Mira nodded. Yes, sir. I wanted to help. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but she didn't shrink. He watched her for a long time. How many languages do you speak? She hesitated, fingers tightening around her cleaning cloth. 8. His brow lifted slightly. 8. French, Spanish, Italian, Mandarin, Portuguese, and a few others, she replied softly. And no one knows this, he asked. No one asked, she said, this time with a bit more strength. There was a pause. Something in Royce's expression shifted, though it was hard to say what. A flicker of curiosity, maybe, or something else entirely. Suddenly, the office door opened. Gina, the floor manager, stepped in, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She broke. Protocol, Gina said, not bothering to hide her annoyance. Staff don't speak to guests in anything but English unless authorized. Royce held up a hand. Enough. Gina looked irritated but stepped back. I want to know more about you, Royce said, eyes still on Mira. She didn't reply. Not yet. He nodded slightly. Later. For now, go back to your post. Mira walked out slowly, head spinning. Whispers followed her in the hallway. Someone had seen. Everyone was talking. She picked up her mop and returned to the same marble floor. She'd been cleaning minutes ago, but it didn't feel the same anymore. For the first time, Mira wasn't invisible. She had been heard. And now there was no going back. The staff room smelled like coffee and old fabric softener. Mira sat alone on the edge of a plastic chair, still in her uniform, her fingers nervously twisting the edge of her sleeve. She could feel the glances, quick, sideways ones from other cleaners as they passed by, whispering just low enough to be heard but not understood. No one had ever paid much attention to her before. Now they were all looking. Not with kindness, not with curiosity, just confusion, maybe even resentment. She tried to brush it off, but it clung to her like dust. An hour after the incident in the lobby, a staff message came through her hotel-issued phone. Please report to Director Royce's office at 2 p.m. That was all it said. At 1:59, Mira stood in front of the tall glass door trying to slow her breathing. When she knocked, the door opened immediately. Mr. Royce sat behind a large desk, papers spread neatly across the surface. He waved her in. This time she took a seat. He didn't smile, but he didn't frown either. I've reviewed your file, he said, voice calm. No complaints, steady work, quiet, invisible almost. Mira blinked. I've also spoken with Mrs. DeSantis, the guest you helped this morning, he continued. She said you not only calmed her down but helped resolve a payment issue, translated a tech problem, and even gave her directions to the art museum. I just did what I could, Mira replied. He leaned forward. You did more than that. You changed the tone of the morning. Then came the question again. How many languages? 8, she repeated. He studied her. Self-taught? She nodded. I study at night, after work, after my brother goes to sleep. Mr. Royce tilted his head. You have a child? No, she said quickly. My little brother, Thomas, he's 12. I've been taking care of him since our parents passed. I work nights so I can help him with school in the mornings. For a moment, the only sound in the office was the hum of the overhead lights. Then he leaned back in his chair. That's a lot for someone your age. I don't have much of a choice, she replied, more quietly. It's just how it is. His expression changed slightly. The sharp edge softened. You've clearly got skills well beyond your position, Mira, he said, but some people won't see it that way. She raised her eyes to meet his. I noticed, she said flatly. He gave the smallest nod. You'll face resistance. People dislike change, especially when it comes from someone they didn't expect. You need to be ready for that. Mira didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her eyes said everything. Later that evening, she walked into her apartment, the air smelling faintly of boiled rice and cleaning spray. The place was small, with flickering lights and worn-out furniture, but it was home. Thomas sat cross-legged on the floor surrounded by school books. You're home late, he said without looking up. I had a meeting, Mira said, setting down her bag. Did something happen? He asked, glancing up. She gave him a tired smile. Sort of. He didn't press. He never did. Tomas had learned early to read moods like weather, quiet storms, and silent sunshine. It was how they both survived. A moment later, he held up a math worksheet. "Can you help me with this?" Mira dropped to the floor beside him, pushing aside her own exhaustion. As they worked through numbers and fractions, her phone buzzed. A new message from Mr. Royce. "Please come to the 5th floor conference room at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'd like to discuss your role here." Mira stared at the screen, heart racing. She didn't respond right away. That night, as the city hummed outside, their window and the world began to sleep, Mira lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling. Was this an opportunity or a warning? She thought about the way the other staff looked at her, the way Gina, the floor manager, had frowned during her last shift, the way the guests had stared like she didn't belong in their world. But then, she remembered the smile of the woman she had helped, the relief in her voice, the way Mr. Royce had said, "You changed the tone of the morning." In the silence of her room, Mira whispered a quiet promise to herself. "If they finally see me, I won't let them forget." The next morning, Mira stood outside the 5th floor conference room, her palms slightly damp. She could hear voices inside, laughter, murmurs, the occasional clink of a coffee cup. These weren't voices she was used to hearing up close. Managers. Executives. People who wore polished shoes and spoke with confidence. She took a deep breath and stepped in. The room was sleek and filled with bright morning light. A large table stretched down the center, surrounded by leather chairs. On the far side stood Mr. Royce. He nodded once at Mira, motioning her forward. "Everyone," he began. "This is Mira Halden." All eyes turned. "She's joining us as our new guest communication coordinator," he continued. "Her knowledge of multiple languages and her experience with our hotel makes her a unique fit for this role." There was polite applause. Small, cautious. A few people smiled, most didn't. After the meeting, a man in a perfectly tailored gray suit approached her. His hair was neat and his smile sharp. "Drew Cantor," he said, extending a hand. "Senior Operations. You've made quite the entrance." "Thank you," Mira said, shaking his hand. "Cleaner to coordinator. That's not a common path. Here," Drew added, still smiling. "I suppose not," she replied carefully. He leaned in just slightly. "Just be careful. The higher you climb, the more people notice." Then he walked away before she could respond. Mira felt the message behind his words. This wasn't going to be easy. Over the next week, Mira's days looked completely different. Instead of mops and supply closets, she was now managing guest issues, translating for international visitors, and helping staff understand cultural differences. She even started creating small guides for front desk workers, tips for greeting guests in their native language, common travel questions, and polite phrases in French, Mandarin, and Arabic. Some people were kind. A few were curious, but others weren't so quiet in their dislike. One afternoon, she walked into a meeting only to find it had already started, without her. Her name had been left off the email. A day later, a folder she had carefully prepared for a guest had gone missing. By the end of the week, Mira overheard 2 co-workers whispering in the break room. "She thinks she's better than us now." Maybe. Mr. Royce just likes a good charity story. The word stung, but she kept walking. That evening, Mira sat on the balcony of her small apartment, the city lights glowing below like quiet stars. Thomas was inside humming as he built something out of old Lego pieces. She stared out into the night, wondering if she'd made a mistake. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Mr. Royce. "Great feedback from today's guest. Keep it up." It helped. A little. But the next day, the real challenge came. Drew Cantor appeared at her desk just after lunch, holding a printed memo. "You might want to take care of this before it becomes a problem," he said smoothly. Mira took the papers. It was a report she hadn't written, with her name on it. Several sections had wrong information, numbers that didn't match, dates that didn't make sense. She knew what this was. "Thank you," she said calmly. He walked away, confident. But what he didn't know was that Mira had copies. She had started saving backups of everything weeks ago just in case. She spent the next hour carefully printing, highlighting, and organizing. She placed the forged memo next to her original version, labeled clearly. Then she walked down the hall, straight into Mr. Royce's office. Something came up, she said. He looked up from his desk, listening. She laid the documents out in front of him one by one, clear, organized, undeniable. He scanned them, his brow tightening. "Who gave this to you?" "Drew," Mira said plainly. He didn't respond right away. He gathered the papers and set them aside. "Thank you, Mira," he said quietly. "This won't be overlooked." When she stepped out of the office, her heart was still racing. But it wasn't fear this time, it was something else. Strength. The next few days were strange. People watched her more closely, but not with the same quiet judgment. Some nodded as she passed. A few even asked her for help. At first, she didn't know how to feel about that. Then one afternoon, Mr. Royce found her alone in the break room. "They're still talking," he said. Mira looked up from her tea. "Let them." His eyes met hers. "You belong here, Mira. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. A few months had passed since Mira Halden traded her mop for a desk near the executive wing. But even now, there were days she still wiped down her own keyboard out of habit. Some changes take time to settle. The Belcourt Regency Hotel didn't shift overnight either. From the outside, everything looked the same. Shiny marble floors, gold-trimmed elevators, and polished smiles at the front desk. But under the surface, something was different. Mira had become a quiet storm. Not loud, not flashy, just steady. Each morning she greeted the staff in different languages, depending on who was there. She helped solve problems before they became complaints. She taught the front desk how to welcome guests in Korean, German, and Arabic. The guests noticed. So did Mr. Royce. But so did Drew Cantor. Though he said little after the incident with the forged memo, Mira felt his eyes on her in every meeting. His smile never changed, but his tone did. Polite on the outside, calculating underneath. He wasn't finished. And Mira knew it. Still, she did her job. With care, with focus, and with grace. She believed if she kept her head down in her work, honest, the truth would rise on its own. And one day, it did. It started with a whisper. One of the junior clerks overheard Drew trying to coach a staff member into changing records. Again. A mistake here, a missing file there. Small things. Things that could make Mira look careless. But the clerk didn't stay silent. A quiet investigation began, this time led by internal affairs from the hotel's parent company. They reviewed emails, file logs, security footage, and Mira's reports. She hadn't known they were watching, until one morning Drew's office door was closed. All day. And then, it was empty. Word spread quickly. He'd been dismissed. No announcement. No drama. Just a clean removal. Justice doesn't always arrive loudly, but when it comes, it settles like calm after a storm. Later that day, Mira found herself alone in the hotel's rooftop garden. The city stretched endlessly below, the air fresh and full of quiet energy. Mr. Royce joined her, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "He's gone," he said simply. "I heard," Mira replied, keeping her voice neutral. "You knew it was coming." "I hoped," she said. He handed her a mug. "You handled everything with restraint. Most people would have shouted." "I've done enough shouting in silence," she said. "It's louder than people think." Royce smiled for the first time in days. "You've taught me a lot, Mira. More than you know." She didn't reply. But she let the words settle. They meant more than she expected. Over the following weeks, things changed in small but meaningful ways. Staff from different departments started attending Mira's short language workshops on lunch breaks. Guests left handwritten notes of thanks, praising her for going beyond the basics. Younger employees, especially those from immigrant families, began opening up about their skills, their hopes. People who had once stayed quiet were starting to speak. One afternoon, Mira was called into a meeting with the director and two other senior managers. "We want to create a new position," Mr. Royce explained. "A cultural engagement leader. Someone to help staff and guests feel understood. To train people, to set a new standard." Mira blinked. "You're offering that to me?" "We're not just offering," the other manager said. "We need you in that role." She nodded slowly, feeling the weight of what that meant. Not just a new title, not just another seat at the table. It was proof that her voice had finally become something people listened to. That evening, she returned home to the same small apartment. The lights still flickered. The couch still creaked. Tomas sat at the kitchen table finishing a science worksheet. "Hey," he said, looking up. "You look kind of important." She laughed softly. "I got a new job today." Thomas grinned. "What is it now?" "I help people feel like they matter." He tilted his head. "Is that a real job?" "It is now," she said, ruffling his hair. She walked over to the window and looked out at the blinking city. So many lights. So many stories unfolding quietly, just like hers once did. The next day, she stood in the hotel lobby, watching as guests passed by and staff moved with purpose. The same space where she had once mopped floors in silence now echoed with different sounds. Hellos in 5 languages, laughter between staff, a young cleaner asking a guest in Spanish if they needed help. She smiled. Her badge now read, Mira, Halden Cultural Engagement Director, but it wasn't the title that made her proud. It was knowing she had earned it by being exactly who she was, not louder, not more perfect, just real. As she walked past the marble staircase, the same one she had scrubbed every night for years, she paused. The surface was smooth and cool under her fingertips, solid, familiar. Behind her, a group of new hires waited for training. One of them looked nervous, young, holding a notepad tightly. Mira turned, gave a small smile, and walked over. "Hi, I'm Mira," she said. "I used to be where you are." The young woman blinked. "Really?" She nodded. "Everyone starts somewhere, but where you go next? Well, that part's up to you." In that moment, something shifted again. Not just in the lobby or in the air, but in the feeling that Mira carried in her chest. A quiet revolution had happened, not through force, not through fame, but through truth, kindness, and the courage to stay steady when it would have been easier to disappear. She had once walked these halls like a ghost. Now she walked them like someone who belonged,